Two memories that I have of the housing projects. But on the other hand, I never felt, even though I grew up there, that I was limited to the housing projects. And so even when I was very young, I would get on the L and I would go all the way to the north side and I'd go hang out. And then when I got to be old enough to travel on my own, I would go to Philadelphia, or I would go to New York, or I would get a job washing dishes and I would go produce a show with the money I made, and then I'd go to New York and hang out. And I was 16, 17, 18 at the time. So I got a chance to see the world because I never limited myself to what other people felt was possible.
I have one more question. Were there any people that you met while you were living in Chicago growing up that have strongly influenced who you've become today?
I can probably name about 10. Because recently I did a piece called My Circle of Mentors. One of those was Oscar Brown Jr., who, if you look him up, was a singer and playwright and did performances on Broadway, and he did work in the schools. Matter of fact, one of the first productions I ever saw in high school, he wrote, and that influenced me to do musicals. So Oscar Brown Jr. was one. Professor Dr. Bobby Wright, who was a psychologist, was one. Dr. Anderson Thompson, who's with the Center for Inner City Studies. My business mentor was Alan Collard, who taught me to only allow yourself to be evaluated when you told someone what should be expected. Because his position was that people can't criticize you unless you tell them that you have agreed to do something. And I so have held that to heart. So he was one. Let me see, who else would I put on that list? Coro Harold Johnson, who was one of the founders of ETA, which is a theater on. He was the first person that helped me to direct my first play. And I guess I should mention some women. So Val Gray Ward, who was the founder of the Kumba Theater, is a dear friend and gave me one of my early directing opportunities. Dr. Barbara Sizemore, who ran the Woodline Project that hired me for one of my first jobs. I mention a lot of these people because it is important that young people find folks that will invest in them. And I think the reason that I can call on so many mentors is because they felt that if they invested in me, it wouldn't be wasted. And that's why they spent the amount of time that they did. And so I had a great number of people. Phil Coran, who was one of the founders of the Artistic Heritage Ensemble that ultimately became Earth, Wind, and Fire. He was, again, one of the folks that took me under his wing. So it was a lot of them. Dr. Burroughs, again, I was 11 years old when I met her and started going to the museum. Hammurabi Rob, who was one of the other founders of the DuSable Museum, and had what was the first mobile museum. He had a van that had a lot of books and pictures in the back, and he would drive up on us and jump out the van and make us listen to his stories about Black history.
Wow.
You know, so there's a lot of them. Yeah. My father, my mother, even my father-in-law, had great influence. You have no value for life. You know, you have to see that I have the possibility of being able to conquer something. I have the possibility of succeeding. And a lot of our children don't and cannot see it. You know, because there's nothing reflected in front of them that will allow them to do such.
And you said, how did the policy shape your life?
You know, the policy really didn't shape my life. My life was shaped by the people that I ran into, the people that were available to me, and the experiences that I was able to have because I was fearless. And I say fearless because there was nothing that I didn't think I could do. You know, so I mean, if you say to a 18-year-old, go to New York and you don't know anybody, you got a couple of $100 in your pocket, and you're just gonna take the train to New York and you're gonna get off and you're just gonna hang out in New York. And that's what I did. you know, and I did it all over the country. I was on a boat outside of Venezuela a couple of years ago. I had gone to Trinidad to do a project with the government. And I was sitting on this yacht right outside of South America. And it dawned on me for the first time how far I had come. And I don't mean financially, I mean just from standing outside of those project walls to being in Europe, you know, to be in Hawaii, to be in Brazil, you know, and a lot of people don't have the experience, but it's not because they couldn't. So to buy a pair of gym shoes, for example, people didn't say, this is the right man for the job. I'm going to look beyond the limitations of race, and I'm going to look at people and what they do. It's on your generation to change the world. But you got to realize it's your responsibility. Malcolm X, one man. Jesus, one man. It starts with one. Now they had a whole lot of people around him. You know, he had all of his, they had their homies. But it starts with one person. And anybody can be that one. And so my message to folks that look at this is reconnect. Find your connection with not only your history, but where your community comes from, the power that used to be Chicago. Really quick story as we leave. We talk about Bronzeville. In 1853, I believe, there was a guy named Policy Sam that came to Chicago and started a little game down on Michigan Avenue called Policy, where he had these little balls, and he would have them in his hat. He'd throw some money in, and he would pick the balls out, and you would win. It was ultimately made illegal. And it was one of the things that built Providence Hospital. It built Major League, Negro League Baseball. It built the career of Joe Louis. It built up the majority of the South Side. When you go down King Drive, a lot of those homes were built as a result of policy money. But the government made it illegal. And then they turned around and they called it the lottery. Started as a black game. True story. Started as a black economic engine, something that would give the community economic resources to build itself. So it starts with us starting something as a little game, simple as lottery, or as major as running for the president. And there's a saying that first you have to see it, then you can be it. We have to afford our young people an opportunity to see themselves in a way that they can achieve.